Hello and welcome back to the penultimate session for Future Health Summit 2016. So we're very confident we're going to end on a high because we've got something that is very, very topical. We're going to talk about our tech habits or tech-life balance, as we like to call it. So the next four presentations are all about how we use technology. I'm sure you'd agree it's revolutionized both the corporate and healthcare sectors. And whilst it's brought benefits, it's also brought challenges. So this session is not anti-tech. Instead, we're going to talk to you about how you can engage with tech better. So it's worth remembering that this is a very new topic, and it's different for every company. So our goal today is really just to give you food for thought. We'd like you to all challenge yourself and see throughout these sessions what you think are the key issues for your workplace when it comes to tech-life balance. And I think you'll all be very surprised. So as the first speaker is me, hello. I know it's late on a Friday afternoon, so rather than you hear my voice for the next couple of minutes, I'm going to play a very short video.
Really?
Really?
It's time for a phone to save us from our phones. New Windows Phone, designed to get you in and out and back to life.
Be here now, the irony of a Microsoft advert that's 5 years old. So my name is Chris Flack. I'm the co-founder of Unplug. Our mission is to help you be the master of technology rather than technology mastering you. We deliver fun, evidence-based, and engaging programs on what we call tech-life balance. So we're at a stage in life where everyone has access to pretty much every source and type of information. Jon Kabat-Zinn, the mindfulness guru, has a lovely quote that we're Stone Age bodies in a space age world. We need to work out what's important and what's not. Otherwise, as Kimberly Fitzgerald was saying this morning, we'll end up having information overload and burnout. This is a lovely quote, a recent quote from Bill Gates. Today, the challenge is to make computers more intelligent. Software still doesn't understand what thing I should pay attention to next. So filtering and prioritization are key. I'm sure we've all seen that image in the bottom right-hand corner and just wondered, where we should place our time, where it's most valuable. So how are we doing in Ireland? Well, in the last couple of months, we've done a number of surveys culminating in more than 500 people being asked the very simple question, how many hours a day are you plugged in? And quite simply what that means is, when is your phone switched on by you? So it could be in your bedroom, it could be just in your pocket during the day. The results are startling, 19 hours a day on average. For those of you who have children, you'll have no surprise to find out that Gen Z and Gen Y are more like 21 hours a day. And that's the key thing. It's normal. That really is the issue, because it's normal in society. So say, for example, if somebody sitting in this room was to get out a book and start reading it, they might get funny looks. But I'm imagining that many of you have your tech within a hand's reach. It's totally normal. It's muscle memory. However, this Fastnet research from just a couple of years ago, so Fastnet, based down in Cork, so this is Irish data found that nearly 75% of people working think that technology has had a negative impact on their work-life balance. We met with one of the largest consulting firms in the world just last week, and their HR team confirmed that for both them and their clients globally, information overload is a key issue. So let's look at some examples of business leaders who practice tech-life balance. I'll just give you a couple of examples here. So eBay, Lacey Robertson, who's their head of learning, organization, and development, she's instituted a no-device policy during most of the senior management meetings. As a result, they just go in with pen and paper, and productivity has gone through the roof. Volkswagen, for all of their operational staff who have a company mobile phone, the company switches off the email at 6 p.m. in the evening and switches it back on at 8 a.m., giving them real work-life balance. What do these companies all have in common? Well, they know that people are more productive and well when you take a break. So before we move on to some more examples in the next couple of talks, just in a quick summary as an intro to what tech-life balance is, we're living in a new world with old rules. We essentially now have to pick how, when, where, and why we use technology. We need to become the master of technology instead of it becoming the master of us. I'm going to leave you just with this quote. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. And here's a headline from the Telegraph just 2 months ago. Massive sculpture relocated because people busy texting kept walking into it. The day has arrived. Thank you. I'd like to hand over now to David Ryan Polgar, who's from the Center for Tech Addiction in the United States, to talk about distraction in the workplace. Thank you.
All right. You know, I got a little jealous earlier with the dancers. You know, I was doing the dance moves. Hopefully everybody else was. And I was saying, my God, my presentation is going to be kind of boring in comparison, and especially this late in the afternoon. If you haven't had your afternoon coffee, I'd like to kind of start off with an exercise. So let's get a little dance moves going here. So I want everybody who feels like they do complex work in their workplace, if you do complex work, please stand up. So stand up if you do complex work. And if you want to do a dance move, you can. I'll use that time to pour my water. Feel free to use what you've learned today. All right, so now most everybody's standing. We do complex work in the workplace. Now I want you to sit down if you feel like you're constantly interrupted at work. Okay? Therein lies the rub. We have a major problem. We understand that we're doing complex work, yet we also understand that we're living in a perpetual state of distraction, right? What do we do about this? Brain research has been clear that there is a connection between our cognitive abilities and how we're distracted. In other words, this perpetual state of distraction, and what we've seen where I work at the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction in the United States, is that our inability to stay focused for a sustainable amount of time is depleting our ability to do these high cognitive tasks. All right. When we think of our workplace, I want you to think about that, right? How long can you and how long can your fellow workers go without being interrupted? Because what we're looking at today, to give you the meta picture, what we're looking at is saying, this is the 21st century. Are we still approaching this issue of the workplace in a 20th century mentality? Are we still treating our employees? Are we still treating the workplace as a kind of factory mentality? Because in a factory mentality, what were you producing? You were producing widgets. We've gone from physical widgets to now the widgets that sit on our phone. The important part is, and what we're trying to struggle with, is how do we maximize the productivity of a knowledge worker? And more importantly, what does it even mean to be a knowledge worker? What maximizes our productivity? Because there is not a linear relationship between the time invested and the productivity of somebody who needs creativity and high cognitive skills. So with this question, how long can we go without being interrupted? Studies have shown 3 minutes. Think about that. I'm speaking for 20 minutes. Think about the amount of time. So you're interrupted about 6 times. I want you to also visualize right now. Think of a nice pretty picture. I have a lot of pretty pictures, hopefully, in these slides. Think about when you get the best work done, right? You're sitting on a beach somewhere, maybe you took a hike. Why do I ask that? Because when you are thinking most clearly, when you are having your aha moments, those are not the times when you're being distracted, when you just received an instant message, when somebody knocks on the door. It's when you get into that state of flow, when you get into that state where you actually have a sustainable amount of time where you can get to a deeper level of thought. The important part, and the part of this presentation, is that our modern workplace requires an environment where we can have those sustainable periods of time. This is not just food for thought. This is not just a feel-good. Listen, I'm an American. Everything comes down to money in the U.S. This affects the bottom line. So if we were talking about the bottom line here, think about what that same study also found, that nearly almost 10,000 euros of lost production a year because of that amount of interrupted, loss of time, and loss of focus. So you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, if there's not a linear relationship with time, what does it matter? Does it matter how much we're getting interrupted? The answer is yes, because of how we need to get to that deep level of thought. We also find that once you are interrupted, it can take nearly 23 minutes to get back to that state, to get back to that deeper state where you are thinking clearly, when you can have a deep level of thought. Here's why this topic is complicated. Distractions are not as simple as an external way, right? It affects the external and the internal. What I mean by that is the workplace has to be conducive for sustained periods of time where a person can think, where an employee can think. But we also need to solve the internal issues of how we, as a worker, as an employee, how we are easily distracted. Because here's something we oftentimes don't talk about, that I haven't heard a lot yet today. We not only get distracted, we might have a desire to be distracted, right? You wonder why our tech companies make so much money. Sometimes we have a desire to quickly check our phone, right? As earlier talks have discussed, the dopamine connection, as we work with at the Center for Internet and Technology Addiction. So we need a two-prong approach that focuses on the internal, right? How that employee is dealing with technology, but also externally. Is there what we call telepressure? Are we putting too much pressure on that employee to quickly respond? What we oftentimes talk about is that technology has moved so rapidly, but we have not advanced to create the social antibodies against this. We have not evolved as a society with social norms to determine how best to deal with these issues. So to kind of reiterate some of these points, externally, let's look at some of these, right? How many of you get too many emails? It's actually kind of embarrassing that in 2016, I'm still even talking about emails, right? If you talk to somebody 10 years ago, they would say, come on. That shows you how difficult this issue is. Because if we cannot even solve the problem of too many emails after 20 some odd years, it shows you how difficult this is going to be. Oftentimes, our technology is set up with a slot machine mentality. So when you think about slot machines and why gambling can be, quote unquote, addictive for a lot of people, it's because of the randomness of it. Every time you pull a lever on a slot machine, you do not know if you're going to win, if you're going to lose, what characters are going to come up. That can be very pleasurable because every time we pull, we don't know what we're going to get. It's very similar to every time Facebook tells me I have a notification. Is it something important? Is it somebody you respect? Is it a friend? Or is it just a notification for an event that you're not going to attend? You don't know, but you check it. And that's the important part, right? A new study just came out that the average individual now spends up to 50 minutes a day on Facebook. Significant period of time. You're probably thinking, well, hopefully you're not thinking, but maybe you are. Who cares? What does it matter if we have a distracted workplace? Because some commentators argue that this is just the modern workplace, that we as humans are going to evolve to just being perpetually distracted. I don't think so, and here's why. A distracted workplace is an unhealthy workplace because being constantly distracted is mentally and physically exhausting. Have you ever talked to a performer? Have you ever talked to a musician? Sometimes if you're talking to them off stage, they're not the same person they were on stage. And you might think, geez, they were so friendly on stage. They had so much energy. How come off stage they seem shy? Or they didn't seem to have a lot of energy? Well, think about that for a minute. That's because when a person is performing, they are, quote unquote, on. They bring a certain level of energy. They have a certain amount of awareness. This is the frustration that a lot of us feel by constantly being on with our smartphones, right? We're firing at all engines. This can be a little exhausting, and hence why a lot of people talk about plans to unplug. The mental aspect, as I discussed with the stress of always being on, we also have the issue of poor sleep, right? A lot of studies show the connection between the blue light that's emitted from smartphones and other electronic devices awakens our system, right? So there's a major distinction between reading a book at night and checking your phone. So one of my favorite quotes from Nicholas Carr. Nicholas Carr, the former editor-in-chief at the Harvard Business Review, also wrote a great book called The Shallows. A few years ago in 2008, he wrote, Is Google Making Us Stupid? An article that was very influential in Atlantic magazine. You see what he is writing. That he no longer is able to think deeply. He is no longer able to have deep thoughts. But when we were standing up, we all said that at our workplace, in order to be successful, we need to think deeply. We need to have those moments. Something is amiss, right? But it's not all doom and gloom because there's a lot of positive on the horizon because there's a lot of new products coming out and there's also a lot of awareness. I think this is a testament to this awareness. By me even being up here is showcasing that we are reaching that tipping point when enough people have said, yes, technology is great, but we need to use it correctly to maximize productivity. We're not doing away with it, but we are going to treat it differently so that it's not interrupting something that we find important. And what we find important as knowledge workers, since again, we are not physically producing widgets that move at a standard period of time anymore, we need those moments where nobody is knocking at the physical door or the proverbial door. Nobody is interrupting you. Right? And that's why, again, I just want you to visualize that and think about your own workplace. It is two-pronged, and what a lot of people are doing to change the two-pronged nature of external and internal is they're creating certain time locks, if you will. Believe it or not, a lot of the most innovative workplaces with technology have been tech companies. And even though that might seem ironic, it usually comes from the fact that these are individuals who realize the power of technology to either be positive or to be negative. One of the most influential ones is Google's Search Inside Yourself program, which I know Chris Flack, right? I think you attended that. The important part that these are companies that realize this is a struggle, and this is something we have to deal with. So in a recent study by Career Builder, they asked managers what was so distracting in the workplace. No surprise, look what's coming up, right? Our mobile phones, the internet, social media. The key part is that these are areas that we need to sequester away in order to do our best work. I like to say, if left to our own devices, we'll always be on them. And that's the issue. What I was excited about coming to Ireland is when I think about Ireland, when I think about the Irish, I think of soulful, right? I think of writers. A famous writer in the United States, Jonathan Franzen, he has gone so far to make a PC, right? He uses this old Dell, where he takes off the internet, he takes off all social media, because what he found and what he said publicly is that he cannot do any meaningful work with the potential for distraction. What we need to understand in the workplace, crafting this, is that willpower works like a muscle that gets fatigued. Since we're constantly utilizing our willpower, we're out of willpower, right? So again, if left to our own devices, we'll always be on them. Looks like I'm nearing the end, so I can leave you with this final thought. A distracted workplace is an unhealthy workplace. We know we're facing so many distractions, but this is where we have an opportunity to utilize some of the new tools coming out to create a workplace where, as knowledge workers, we respect the time and energy and focus that's needed to maximize productivity. Productivity is not, again, directly related to time. It's related to our focus. So by creating a healthy workplace with tech-life balance, we can create a productive workplace. Thank you.
Thank you, David Ryan Polgar from the Center for Tech Addiction in the United States. So I know some of you are probably expecting to see Andrew Johnson from Scotland right now. I'm not Andrew Johnson, I'm afraid. So Andrew unfortunately had to pull out at the last minute. So I am going to do a very short presentation on mindfulness and the revolution of mindful practice. This is one of the solutions that we'll be talking about as far as tech-life balance. But firstly, I have a question for you. Who in the room within the last month has done any form of sport? So it could be swimming, cycling, running, going up and down the escalator to make your Fitbit vibrate. Could you raise your hand, please, if you've done any form of sport in the last month? Fantastic. So 30 years ago, you would have been a minority. But since the lycra-clad aerobic days of the 1980s, we've been inspired by tighter bums and six-packs. More fundamentally, sport is like fertilizer for the brain. A quick hit of endorphins to balance out any day. So why do we do it? Well, we live in a chaotic world of instant gratification in which sport is very, very accessible. 30 years ago, if you had a gym membership, you'd probably be labeled as a professional athlete. So why, if we take the lead from professional athletes, why don't we follow their example and rest our body and mind? So another question for you. How many of you in the room practice mindfulness? Anyone? A few of you. Fantastic. Okay. So let me ask it another way. How many of you contemplate? What I mean by that is really simple things like watching a leaf go down a stream or looking into your lover or your children's eyes and just feeling a moment of love. How many of you contemplate? Have ever contemplated? Most of you. We all do that. So, as I said before, one of the solutions to information overload is mindfulness. Very, very simply, information overload causes distraction. It's noise. Mindfulness enables focus. So I'm going to introduce how this works and give you some examples of how it's worked within different workplaces. So just as far as the fact that we can all do it, we can all contemplate, why aren't we? Well, I think that's going to start changing. And the reasons really are down to, firstly, research. First of all, neuroplasticity. In recent years, scientists have confirmed that we can rewire the brain. That's fantastic news, because that means if we've had a life of being unmindful, we can be mindful. Yay! Secondly, benefits. So here's a graph which represents all the studies of research on benefits for mindfulness in the last number of years. You can see it's almost shaped like a hockey stick. It's been a dramatic increase in the last number of years, and it's really focused in on benefits around attention, resilience, calm. A lot of our sporting leaders as well are very vocal about the benefits of mindfulness and meditation. So, for example, Rob Kearney has spoken a lot about it recently. And lastly, we live in a time of unprecedented chaos. We're at a tipping point with information. There's so much of it that we struggle to find any downtime at all. And as Dr. Kimberly Fitzgerald said this morning, if we don't get downtime, we crash. So I'm going to give you a bit of a background as to what mindfulness is. Firstly, just a quick definition. Mindfulness is a focus on the present moment without judgment. And just to clear up definitions whilst we're here, meditation is a formal version of that. So meditation is a formal version of a focus on the present moment without judgment, and mindfulness is an informal version of that. So a little bit of a history. Over 2,500 years ago, there was a very wise man called Siddhartha who found peace in himself through something called sati, which was Pali for mindfulness. It then became core of Eastern culture, the whole concept of being, not doing, something that we're not that good at here in the West. But then its biggest impact really in the West came in the form of yoga, the bendy stuff that we know here, and transcendental meditation in the 1960s. In the 1970s, a huge amount of people started focusing on evidence-based programs, the likes of Thich Nhat Hanh, Sharon Salzberg, John Kabat-Zinn, Mark Williams, the list goes on. And they really focused on building evidence-based, scientific-backed programs. And there's some huge names here. Mindfulness-based stress reduction probably being the largest. And as David mentioned earlier, the Google program, Search Inside Yourself, or as the Googlers like to use the acronym, SILLY. So that was all fantastic. It's a great foundation. But then this happened. Sorry, the text has changed format, but I'll read it for you. In the digital era, we take in 5 times more information than before digital. It results in a digital stress affecting our cognitive abilities, resulting in low quality analysis and decisions. Success in the digital era is not about broadcasting more information, but to avoid digital stress and to free up time for cognitive thinking within the organization. It's another quote from Nicholas Carr, former editor and chief at the HBR. So where are we now with this? Well, we've moved on quite a lot, and what we found ourselves in is what we call an age of digital mindfulness, which Lawrence will be talking about in the next presentation. So we're in a world of apps now. There are now more than 1,000 apps out there to do with mindfulness. And I'm lucky enough to have reviewed the top 20. I reviewed them for the Elephant Journal and a couple of other publications in the last year. And these are the 3 that I found to be the best. These apps make mindfulness accessible anywhere and encourage personalization. We all like different things, and having choice allows us to find a practice that suits us. So, for example, research has shown that the male Scottish voice is the most relaxing voice when it comes to meditation and mindfulness. So I apologize you're hearing a voice from Hampshire. This should be Andrew Johnson, but if you get the chance, listen to his meditations. You might get one later. It's an absolutely fantastic voice. And it's incredible how just little things like that, accents, make it more accessible to us. So I have another question. Just show of hands in the room, who has a Fitbit or a pedometer? Quite a few of you. So we heard in the last slot from Full Health Medical around data-driven medical data. Data-driven fitness has got us all motivated to do something really, really simple. Walk 10,000 steps. It's so simple, but it's made quite a big impact. So data-driven mindfulness is doing the same for our minds. So there's some fantastic wearable technologies out there. There's Muse, the Pip, Take 10, the last 2 of which are based here in Ireland. And they're essentially like Fitbits for the brain. They're wearables that motivate us to practice mindfulness. It is key, however, to remember balance, because although these things are fantastic, we need to have awareness and balance and kind of a connection back to the foundation of meditating and having mindful practice in groups. So the one thing I love about these gadgets is they'll attract people who would probably never, ever consider mindfulness in its current format, and that is amazing. They might just be a gateway to the more traditional forms, but products like this are really going to reshape well-being. So lastly, on this slide, a set of mindful tech products that filter out the noise. So we call these mindful tech apps. So Flipped essentially turns a smartphone into a dumb phone. So this is an interesting one. For those of you who are parents, you can remotely control your children's phone. You could maybe do your parents as well if you wanted to, so that at certain times you could flip it on so that they have a dumb phone and don't have access to any of the applications that they might be distracted by, so that they can potentially get time to do deep work for their homework. Freedom restricts when you use certain websites at certain times, so you can dedicate yourself again to focused work. So where do we take this? Well, no smart business decision is ever made without understanding the data behind it. And our programs at Unplug are all evidence-based. And I'd like just to give you some examples of leaders in the marketplace who use meditation and mindfulness, not only themselves personally, but also promoting it within their organization. So companies like Salesforce, Ford, LinkedIn, Twitter, Cisco, huge market leaders. And a lot of the senior management practice this very simple contemplation and mindfulness. Just as far as research and more evidence, a very, very simple study from the Google People and Innovations Lab found after mindfulness the very simple task of I'm able to find a workable solution to difficult problems, a 20% increase. And the second one, again, a very, very simple question. I am able to pause before reacting. 40% difference. That lovely concept of respond as opposed to reacting. Now, what's really important is we need to find what works for you. If you Google mindfulness, chances are you'll come up with pictures of people doing similar things to this, which look really cool, but not terribly practical unless you want to rip your suit on the Lewis. Find what works for you. You can meditate or practice mindfulness anywhere. You could practice it sitting at home, sitting in the Lewis, lying at home in bed, but just make sure it works for you and you feel comfortable with it. I was very lucky a couple of weeks ago to attend the Mindful Business Conference in New York, and I shared time with corporate well-being leaders from global companies like GE, SAP, Mondelez, GSK, Harvard, Google, and they were talking about what works in the corporate space, and I'd just like to share some of my findings on that. First of all, one of the key things is to make sure you're meeting company objectives. Quite often, mindfulness gets put in a well-being box. In order to get buy-in from the top, which you really need for it to get, as far as it be implemented within the organization, you need to associate it with a core goal. So say, for example, improved productivity. Use a simple language. This is critical, and this is one of the reasons we call unplug. But I lived in India for 1.5 years, and I love the concept of a spiritual language in Sanskrit, but it just doesn't reach a wide audience. It really limits the audience. There was a lovely quote this morning from Alan from Plaintree who said, "Your big words make me feel small," in reference to a case study he had of just changing language and making it feel more accessible. And Mondelez, one of the biggest consumer food companies in the world, so they have Cadbury's and Kraft, they have a mindfulness global program that they don't use the word mindfulness at all. They call it Be at Your Best. And these are just some of the words over on the right. So present, moment, breath, check-in, notice, thinking. They're the words they use. Personalization and accessibility. We're all different, so make your program tailored. GE, one of the biggest companies in the world, use what they call their digital mindfulness toolkit. They have Headspace, they have MBSR. It's all about finding what's right for their different workers. Sustainability. In order to create habits, we have to see reward. One way is by focusing on those benefits of well-being and productivity, but also fun. So the challenge of using things like data-driven meditation or digital tech to measure what's important and actually challenge yourself. The last one actually relates to the first one again. Mindfulness fits very well in well-being. However, with information overload and distraction in the workplace, we're seeing a lot of learning and development budgets now being used for mindfulness as a tool to improve focus and behavioral change. So I'd like just to do a very brief mindfulness practice whilst we're here. First of all, I'd like you to all please stand up, because it's Friday afternoon and we're probably just getting a little bit sleepy. I'd like you just to raise your shoulders up to your ears and then drop them down. And just do some very subtle shoulder rolls, and then just stand neutral. The reason we work on our shoulders and around our neck is that we often have negative emotions held up there. So what I want you to do now is focus on the weight of your feet. So feel the contact point of your feet into the ground, and then gradually sit down. So very gradually sitting down, still being very conscious of your feet and the contact point into the ground. And now just feel the contact point of the chair and your sitting bones sinking into the chair. And we now have a recording from somebody who was supposed to be here but couldn't make it. So if you gently close your eyes and listen to the audio.
If it's safe to do so, close your eyes. Put one hand on your chest and one hand on your stomach and breathe. Allow your breath to go deeper down within you. Take your breathing down into your stomach. That's right. Notice how your muscles relax when you exhale. Spend a few moments allowing each exhalation to release and relax the muscles. That's right. Allow each exhalation to release and relax. Feel the tension just melt away. Two more breaths. That's good. Now gently open your eyes and retain this level of relaxation.
What a voice. It's funny because I get to speak to Andrew every once in a while in relation to Unplug and the work we do, and it's really hard to have a professional conversation with somebody who has such a beautiful voice because you just want to relax every time you're talking to him. So just to finish up, I'd like to give you a very quick takeaway. It's really key to find one very simple thing that you can do every day, and there's lots of things we'll be mentioning in the next couple of presenters as far as examples, but one thing I do is I hug a mug. So it's a simple thing. We all drink cold or hot drinks throughout the day, so when you're doing it, just contemplate on it. Hold the mug for 10 or 20 seconds, really feel that moment. I treat myself, I hold the mug for a whole minute. Make sure you're in that moment, enjoy, and thank you. And I'd now like to hand over to Lauren Sampofo, who's from Digital Mindfulness, to talk about focus in the workplace. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for being here for my talk. In my talk, I'm going to be focusing on real concrete strategies and techniques that you can use to maintain and both increase your level of productivity and creativity in the workplace, instead of just doing what a lot of people do nowadays, which is simply just be busy. So a recent Microsoft study outlined that a goldfish has, on average, an attention span of 9 seconds. And that's very different to the average attention span of a human being, which in 2000 was rated at 12 seconds, but now is measured at 8 seconds. Now, this difference over time, this might make you laugh, or indeed it might bring out in you a sense of shock that, oh my God, in general, human beings have an attention span less than a goldfish. But what I think is that these statistics are really symptoms of a much larger problem that we face nowadays. And this is our inability to directly focus our attention. In addition, these statistics, what they really are a symptom of is our ability to be distracted by the digital environments that we've created for ourselves. Oh, it's gone, okay. And this ability to be distracted by the digital environments that we're creating for ourselves is something that's being recognized by some of the leaders of the largest technology companies. But here's something to think about. Knowledge workers, on average, spend 1 day per week dealing with digital distractions. Now, we've already kind of heard about this from David Polgar, but every time a notification comes in, every time a tweet or a status update or the phone rings, every time that we get notified by our digital devices, we stop, our attention gets interrupted, and we stop to focus our attention on that particular digital device. We're not able to differentiate the importance of these particular notifications, and this costs the average knowledge worker 1 day per week to sort out. A study was recently conducted by the Pew Internet Research Center, and that found, and it was on social media, and that found that people that use social media are more likely to experience stress than those who don't use it so much. And the reason for this is that people who do come into contact with user-generated content experience the emotions that are embedded within the content. So that means, for example, it could be a wonderful day here in Dublin, it could be sunny outside, but if you're reading an emotionally negative post or viewing an emotionally negative video from someone on the other side of the world, you will feel exactly what they feel. Now, something like this has really big consequences for knowledge workers, for people in the workplace, and indeed for our children at school, experiencing negative emotions within this digital river that we're creating. I think one of the most important thing is that what we do online matters. What happens online, what we experience online in the digital world affects our bodies and our minds. In addition, so this is a slightly different version of the presentation I have, but this point here is really important as well. This whole idea of attention residue, that when people engage in complex tasks, as I'm sure everyone stood up for recently, once we change our attention to look at a different window, to look at a different digital input, we have attention residue. It takes us much longer to get back into the same state of focus on the original important task that we were focusing on. And this attention residue, it's called, this is increased with the level of complexity of the task we were originally dealing with. Okay, so if you're dealing with a really, really hard task before and then you get interrupted, it's going to take you much, much longer to get back to the state you were originally. Okay. So let me just explain a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. So, as you just heard, my name's Lawrence, and I founded a company called Digital Mindfulness. And Digital Mindfulness, we're a firm that uses, first of all, data analytics. We use data to help companies and individuals understand the best ways in which they can balance their relationships with digital devices and the digitized environments. Now, what do I mean by digitized environments? I mean that the way that we live our lives now, mediated through screens, mediated through ones and zeros, means that we're changing our behaviors. And this in turn has an impact on the way that our children are taught and the way that we work and we play and we trade. And we bring understanding to these different environments and help people and businesses live better in these environments. The other thing that we do is that we bring different people together. So we have conferences around the world and we bring different stakeholders together to understand how we can better live in this digitized world. Our podcast, which we started last year, is now downloaded in over 70 different countries. What first started as just a simple idea and as something no more than a fringe interest is now downloaded in places not just like Dublin or London or New York, but in places as far-flung as Singapore, Bhutan. There have even been downloads in the Russian Federation, Korea, etc. This is very much a global issue, and it is being understood all over the world. So, focused work in a digital age. Now, what I'm really here to talk about today is this whole idea of focused work. How can we enter this whole state of focused work in the digital age. And what are some of the benefits? Okay, that wasn't meant to happen. Now, some of the benefits of focused work are the ability of workers to direct their attention, to actually actively direct their attention to the tasks in which they're focused on. When we have something, and this is the whole idea of focused work, when we have something that we should be focusing on and actively direct our attention to it, this is the state of focused work. A study by the fabulous Gloria Mark at the University of Irvine, she reported that workload was decreased in terms of knowledge workers and office workers. Once they were able to get into this state of focused work, their ability to produce was increased, and not just because email was removed, but because people were able to focus on the key tasks that they were meant to focus on. We have to remember, that spam, particularly within the workplace, accounts for 50% of email traffic. So 50% of the email traffic that we get at work is not relevant, yet we pay it the same amount of attention. And in addition to the other benefits that you can see on the screen, once we get into that state of focused work, other things dramatically increase. For example, productivity, creativity, our ability to complete complex tasks, while our heart rate dramatically decreases. So how do we get into this state of focused work? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself. So how do we get into this state of focused work? Well, Chris has just been talking about this whole idea of mindfulness, but I want to go a little bit further into that and this whole idea of focus training. How do we train our focus? How do we train our attention? So is it simply the removal of email? If we simply removed email, would this help us get into focused work? Certainly, if we remove email from work, this does give knowledge workers space to focus on very, very important tasks that they were focused on. However, research also shows that training our focus helps people to experience a lot of the benefits that we saw in the previous slide. Chris spoke at length about some of the benefits of mindfulness training and adopting a mindfulness process and how that can be really, really beneficial for knowledge workers. However, when we integrate a mindfulness process and we direct that process at our digitized lives, that's when we see incredible benefits. In an interview that I did on the podcast with Professor David Levy from the University of Washington, in his program, which is called Mindful Tech, and this is the whole idea of schooling students in terms of how you can use technology in a mindful capacity, how you can bring more attention and awareness to the ways that we use technology so that so that technology in the end helps us become better humans rather than us becoming slaves of our technology. He said that the benefits that we're able to derive from this were extraordinary, and that his students, in addition to experiencing decreased stress, were able to dramatically increase their attention and their focus and their ability to complete complex computational tasks. Dovetail this with what are called mindful technologies that help us get into the mental state of heightened awareness. The benefits then become manifold. One of the biggest drawbacks towards developing a mindfulness program in the workplace is that knowledge workers claim that they don't often have the time to develop a mindfulness program, even if it is 10 minutes a day to sit down and practice this. However, applications like Budify and the others that we've seen here, there are different tools that are helping knowledge workers to enter into that state of focused work where they're able to train their attention and they're able to just get more done and to improve the quality of their digitized lives. Finally, another way to get into this state, the mental state where we can, when we get into focused work, is this idea of deep work. Now, during the research and the conversations that we've been conducting, one of the most important ways to get into focused work is this idea of deep work. And deep work is the idea of spending time engaged in work that leverages our training and generates value and pushes our abilities to continually improve. Deep work is very different to shallow work. Shallow work is a type of work that almost anyone can do. Social media updates, emails, tinkering online. This is work that anybody could do, and this is what's called shallow work. However, deep work is also, it's much more difficult to engage in deep work when people are interrupted more. And here on the screen here, you can see some of the ways that that I would recommend you can get into that mental state to perform in deep work. One is concentration circuits. So when we're engaged in complex tasks, using concentration circuits when our energy decreases, when we're feeling tired and we have brain fog, taking your computer and going somewhere inspiring helps you to produce more work of a higher quality much, much quicker. Now, this isn't obviously possible for everyone, but concentration circuits certainly work. Email batching, using some of the filters on Gmail or Outlook or Yahoo to triage your email. Not all email is important. Not all of the notifications that we get in our inbox are important. Is it that important that we get the same notification from our bosses as we get from newsletters or from social media updates? So by triaging and batching our emails so that we're able to rank them by importance really helps. Okay. The last thing I'd like to talk about, just before I go, is this whole idea of deliberate rest. Now, finding real time to recharge is absolutely important for focused work. Most people think that rest is the opposite to focus and to work, but it's not. The two are deeply intertwined and very much help each other. Building in time, working in cycles, like 90-minute cycles. And in addition, 90-minute cycles are the same, it's the same length of cycles as we sleep. With a 15-minute or so break can be hugely beneficial to our levels of productivity and creativity. In fact, these periods of what are called deliberate rest, that helps the brain to process or helps us to do mind wandering that can lead to breakthroughs in complex tasks. In fact, the more time that we allow our brains a balance of time between focus and rest, or allowing our brain time to wander, this permits us to get more deeply into a mental state where we can perform focused work. Okay, now I'd like to pass the floor to Chris.
Thank you, Lawrence. Fantastic. We should have a couple more slides after that slide deck, sorry. So we just have a couple of slides talking about next steps in tech-life balance. So this is just for those of you who are in Ireland. With Unplug, we run a number of programs, primarily, well, they're all evidence-based, but primarily consumer retreats, so in the luxurious surroundings of Grouse Lodge, which is where Michael Jackson used to live. There's a number of you in the room who've actually been on it before. They're beautiful retreats. We also run workshops within corporates and one-to-one. So please do visit www.unplug.ie. And also, if you're interested in seeing any more work from Lawrence is running a summit in October of this year, and details are at his, is it digitalmindfulness.net? Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to just change the content slightly now. We've been focused on tech-life balance. And what we're going to do now is talk back again, as we were earlier today, in well-being, but well-being that's really simple and accessible language. So please can we welcome Ali Canavan, the well-known lifestyle columnist with the Daily Mail and other various media outlets. Ali Canavan, thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I would usually start with a few deep breaths, but Chris has just been through that with you, so I won't put you through it again. But the reason why I usually start all my talks with just getting everyone to just sit and just be for a minute is because usually I ask people in the room to put up their hands and how many people actually take the time to just sit, breathe, and be. And I'm not talking for 20, 30, 40 minutes. I'm actually talking for 2 or 3 deep breaths a day. And we have the research that it also decreases your blood pressure and heart rate, but it has so many other health benefits. And we're going to start with my story. And it's very poignant that I start with breathing because about 50% of us don't really use our breath properly. And it's the most powerful tool we have. It's accessible to all of us all the time, and it's free. And what's better than that? And no matter where you are and no matter what you're doing, you can access it for yourself. So I started modelling when I was about 15 years of age, and I went straight to Paris, and I represented Ireland in the Supermodel of the World competition in Las Vegas. And a little bit before this time, I had been struggling with, I suppose, what you'd call low moods and moodiness, or what my sisters used to call, oh my God, she's grumpy again in the morning. So I didn't really, nobody ever named anything for me through those years. Nobody ever said to me, you've got anxiety or depression. But I remember I was first started to be medicated when I was flying a lot, and I remember saying, you know, I feel really nervous and I feel a little bit lonely, but I think in reflection, I was probably just nervous, flying alone, entering such a big industry. And what happened is I started to be put on Valium and Xanax and antidepressants. And I was told a few years later that, you know, it was just the way it was, that most people would be on medication for most of their life. And that was just it. And I suffered from low moods and kind of deal with it. But what I did during these years was I was always searching for an answer and searching for that in a new therapist, a new counsellor. So when I moved from London to New York, there was 2 things running side by side. So I was always a spiritual soul seeker. I've been meditating for about 20 years, and this took me on a wide variety of very interesting journeys, on lots of retreats with lots of meditation teachers and lots of yoga classes. But running directly alongside that was a self-destruct mode. And I was very lucky, I suppose, that I was in the fashion industry where parties were freely available to me 7 days a week. And the kind of behavior that I was using to escape from myself was condoned. It wasn't condoned by my family, which is why I always ran away. And the only time that I could get relief from me was when I was out on a Friday night and I was drinking, and when I was like on party mode 24 hours a day. So even though I knew that this kind of lifestyle I couldn't sustain for very long, because really what happened was I needed the highs to be higher, but then the lows became lower. And what are we all looking for? This state of balance. So I returned to Ireland after breaking up with my boyfriend after 7 years for a week, and that was 6.5 years ago. And I went to the doctor and he said to me, you're pregnant. And I said, no, I can't, because I'm just after breaking up with my boyfriend and we're not getting back together, so I'm not pregnant. And he was like, no, I think you'll find you actually are pregnant. And what I thought was, one of my worst days turned out to be a turning point that has saved my life. And every time I say that sentence, I always get very emotional. So my son is 5.5. And I say that I just wrote a book for new moms called Minding Mom. I said to Chris, one day I'll do one of these talks. And when I get to that point in my talk, I'll have a celebration because I won't get emotional. But I suppose the emotion that you're seeing is a mixture of relief and genuine happiness and contentment, because the journey started again. And for a while, I was super mom, and I had a brilliant pregnancy, and I was so healthy, and I was very mindful of energies. So I didn't want the energy and the stress that I was going through in my life being passed on to my son. So what I did was really focus on my self-care during my pregnancy. And then after I had the baby, I pushed myself and pushed myself and pushed myself. But I was doing really well, so I didn't see anything wrong with it. Other people were starting to see the cracks, but I kept thinking, I'm fine, look at me. I'm going to work, I'm up all night, I'm breastfeeding, all is good with the world. I only have one child, isn't this fantastic? But over time, things started to get bad. And then all of a sudden, it was crash bang. And I had very, very bad postnatal depression. And I really wasn't able to cope. And what started to happen was the very simple, ordinary things like feeding the baby and changing the baby became very difficult for me to do. I became very much anxiety-ridden. I wasn't allowed to be on my own with my child, and I went to the doctor. I was put on medication. Again, no one ever mentioned to me, how are you living? What are you eating? Are you going for a walk with your baby? Are you taking any time for yourself? None of this was ever mentioned to me except medication, here you go again. And it was during this time, because it wasn't about me anymore, that I decided I had to figure a way out of this. So I decided then that there had to be more to it, and it led me to where I am today in a wellness journey. I am medication-free, I am sober, I am very content and very happy most of the time. And how I've learned to do this is through a number of different things. But what I've really learned on this journey is that it's balance, and it's small steps. I'm a big, big, big fan of small steps and small changes. So what I believe we need to look at is the whole being all the time. We'll use the term mind, body, and spirit. Some people are uncomfortable with spirit. But really, if one is out of sync, the others are too. And we need to nurture every fiber of our being. So even going for a walk on your own and enjoying being in nature, that's serving your inner being. That's connecting with nature. That's doing something for your spiritual health as well. So we need to look at what we ultimately want, why society is getting so sick, both physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, and how we can help people to help themselves. And this is the part I think is really important, because I outsourced my power for years, always looking for answers in doctors and therapists and everybody else. But you're really the only person that can help yourself. And that was a really big lesson for me to learn. So what do we all want? No matter where you are, no matter who you are all over the world, as human beings, we all want the same thing. We all want to feel happy. We all want to be content. I just came back from a 10-day retreat, and I spoke to so many wonderful people during that time. And they all were there for varying different reasons. Less stress in their life, the relationship's gone bad, problem with kids, just lost their job. And at the end of the day, everybody was there looking for answers, but looking to work on themselves, looking to better themselves and their lives. But what did everyone want? They wanted to be content. They wanted to be happy with where they were in their life. But what causes us to feel out of sync? Well, we've heard about tech, which is a huge modern problem. And I actually took 2 weeks off, which I never have done before in my life. And I did think that I would die without my social media. And the first couple of days were difficult. I'm not going to say they weren't. But towards the end, I actually didn't miss it at all. And I was actually dreading coming back to work on Monday, because a lot of my job is on social media. But what's happened this time is, what I've noticed is, this week alone, I haven't been on my phone when my son gets home from school all the time. And he has noticed. He's 5. And he said, Mom, you're not on your phone at all anymore. And that wasn't even conscious. That's because I didn't have it for 2 weeks. I came back, I was using it for work during the day, and I just wasn't back in that really forceful habit of checking if every notification comes in, if it's really important. But it's a whole load of things. We're moving too fast. We have far too distractions, and we're pushing ourselves to breaking point consistently and constantly. And it's up to us to take charge of that. So all of the poor diet, poor lifestyle choices, little or no self-care. My new book is on self-care. And this all leads to stress, less focus, depression, anxiety, sleep problems, relationship issues, and much, much more. But how can we help? And here it's really, how can we help ourselves? But we need to encourage people to find their own formula. I always say, what you feed yourself and how you treat yourself will directly affect how you look and feel. There's simply no escaping that. You cannot put bad food in your body and expect it to run efficiently. Would your car run if you put diesel in a petrol car every day? No, it would just be ridiculous. So you wouldn't get in your car in the morning with absolutely no petrol in it and expect it to run. But that's what most of us do with our mind and bodies every day. We don't fuel it correctly, we don't treat ourselves nicely, yet we expect ourselves to function at an optimal level. That's just unrealistic to expect. So we need to eat better, we need to think more positively, and I always say small happiness habits make such a big difference. It doesn't have to take much time, but like changing little tiny habits that you have over time will have a huge effect on your overall health and well-being. And it has a domino effect as well on the people you love, on your friends and your family, and if you're a parent, your children will notice too. So I always say, big warning, small changes can lead to increased confidence and happiness. But this is what keeps me well. And it's a little bit of everything. And what I've learned over time is that we're trying to strike a balance, but that doesn't mean that we want the scales to be weighed, exactly the same. We need to have a lot of movement within this balance. And at different times of our life, our formulas are going to be changing. When you're pregnant, your formula is different to when you have a baby. When you're a young teenager and you're doing exams, what you need is different. When you become a bit older, your formula will change as you change. When you're in a more demanding job, there's things you'll have to give up. I always say be careful about using the word sacrifice, because I always say it's choices. My family used to say to me, I went back to college last year and I was studying, and at the same time I was writing a book and I was doing exams. And they always say, God, you're sacrificing an awful lot. And I said, I don't think it'll be like that. I'm making choices now that will benefit me in the future. I don't think that's a sacrifice at all. And it's about making choices that benefit you now, but that are going to help you in the future. And it's how you perceive things. But the most important thing is taking back control for yourself. I have daily happiness habits that I encourage everyone to do. I write a gratitude journal every morning, myself and my son every night. It's actually the only way of getting information out of him, I've noticed. When I say to him, what happened in school today? He'll say nothing. What's the teacher saying? Nothing. I'm like, what am I sending you there for? You do absolutely nothing all day. So at night I'd say, what's the one thing you're most grateful for today? And he'll say, I'm grateful for I had that ice cream, Mum. I'm grateful that you got me this. And all of a sudden, he's bringing up all these things that were wonderful that day, and I get to share it with him. But it's really making our brains focus on what we do have and not on what we don't have. And it's a very natural thing to focus on what went wrong that day. And sometimes when I'm struggling and finding things that are good, as we all do, I'll sit there with my arms crossed going, it was just a really shit day. I can't think of anything that was right. But then I'll find something that was good. And that one thought will lead me to the next thought that was good. And all of a sudden I'm thinking, wow, it wasn't a bad day at all. But more exciting is that we have the science to back this up. You're actually rewiring your brain by keeping a gratitude journal, by focusing on things that are good in your life. And I think it's really exciting to know that we can rewire our brain at any stage, that our brain is malleable. We're not stuck in our story. We can change our story. For years, I thought I was stuck in my story. And I was really so badly stuck in it that I got worse and worse. And I didn't ever see a way out, and I didn't see that I could get better. And I'm so excited that I'm standing here today and that I feel great. And I know if I know well, anyone can be well. I was told I'd be stuck with depression and anxiety for the rest of my life, and there's just nothing you can do about it. And I think we fear the brain, and we fear people with depression and anxiety, and we talk about removing the stigma, but it's still there. It is very much still there. It's something you can't see. You know, you wouldn't have someone come into A&E suffering from mental health, or if they had a broken arm saying, sorry, there's a waiting list for 6 months to see someone, your broken arm will just have to wait. We wouldn't expect people to be in that much pain and to have to go on waiting list, but we do in this country, and it's not really getting much better. So there's a difference between talking about it and doing something about it. But wake up every day and start your day with intention. This is really, really powerful. I used to wake up and stumble out of bed and go over and put on the coffee pot and have a coffee. And now I wake up with intention every day, and the first thing I say is thank you. And I say it a couple of times as I put my feet in the ground, because I mean it. Because I'm so grateful to feel good. My bad days now are good days compared to what I used to feel like. And even if I am slipping, which did happen a few weeks ago after my book came out, I'm able to pull myself back that little bit quicker than I was before. We're all on this journey together. We're all in a lifelong journey where we all want the best for ourselves and each other, and we all want to feel well. And it's a journey that we become, sometimes we'll be very good at, and sometimes we won't be so good at. But it's about being a little bit kinder to yourself. Because what I noticed is when I started to treat myself better, I began to really value myself. And when I started to value myself, very sadly, I looked back on my life and thought, wow, I was never really very kind to myself before. How many of us get up in the morning and look in the mirror and go, my God, you look awful, that dress looks so awful on you. And that's what I did for most of my life as a model. And when I started to value myself, I wanted to treat myself better. And this had a knock-on effect on my health, my wellness, my abilities as a parent, and how I work and how I live. So it's up to you to find your own formula, but there's so many different things here that you can pull from. And finding what works for you, as even Chris said earlier, is really important. So gratitude, like I said, look at all the things that gratitude can do. Less stress, difficult tasks become easier, mental strength, just be, increases empathy. Who doesn't want all of that in their life? Simple, healthy eating tips. My rule is keep it real, keep it simple. We have so many conflicting books and information out there, and what I want people to do is start eating real food. Stop eating processed packaged food, sugary cereals, make food at home. If you're time poor, freeze it for the week, so that when you get home in the evening and you're tired, you have fresh, healthy food there. Just start changing your choices. Start changing the choices about yourself, about how you speak to yourself, and you'll want to treat yourself better with food and exercise. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate is the one thing I'm going to pick out there. It's so important for all of us. So reasons to live a healthier lifestyle, they're all listed there behind you. And who doesn't want all of these things that I've listed there? Better mood, better quality of life, increased optimism, better sleep, better concentration, self-love, self-worth. And nothing changes if you don't. Remember that. And thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Fantastic. Very simple words, but profound changes in life. So I'd like to invite the panel up for the last discussion of the day. So Ali's coming back on the stage. Harry, McCann, Elva, Carrie, and John Ryan. Please. Thank you very much. Unless you can all four squeeze on there. I'll sit as well. I'm going to be on my own over here. This is beautiful. Okay. So, for those of you who don't know these guys, we've got a really interesting mix of people. We have Harry, who's 17 and came from school a couple of hours ago. He's a tech entrepreneur. Elva, who has run one of the most successful Facebook groups, started in Ireland and now all over the world with more than 30,000 members. Ali, you've just met. John Ryan from Great Places to Work, and Justin Keating from one of the winners of Great Places to Work, version 1. So just to give a brief introduction, I'd like each person just to give a minute of this is what I do, and then we're going to have a bit of a panel discussion. So Harry, if you could start, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, so as Chris said, I'm 17 years old. I'm an entrepreneur. In 2013, I set up my first business, which was KidTech, which was to teach kids how to code. I spent around 18 months traveling around Ireland, teaching around 1,000 kids to code. The company received the support of people like Stephen Fry, the British actor, Nora Casey, the Irish entrepreneur, many other people. Then in 2014 I went on and set up the Digital Youth Council, which is the first of its kind in the world. We work with young people in Ireland and around the world, and with industry and government to give young people a voice in science, technology, engineering and maths. Other than that, I'm supposed to be studying for my Leaving Cert. If my mum asks, I very much am studying for my Leaving Cert, so nobody tweet that out. And yeah, other than that, that's me.
Number 4.
Use the other one. Yeah. So I started Girl Crew. I work with 2 other girls on it now. as Chris said, it's Facebook groups. They're located in cities all over the world. The reason I started it was there was one Friday night where I wanted to go out dancing, and nobody was free. Everybody was either tired or working or stressed out and wanted to stay home or whatever. So I used the dating app Tinder. I changed my gender setting to male, so I'd show up to all the other straight girls and I said, hey, let's all go out and meet men out instead. Because I was sick of online dating as well, I think. So I thought maybe I'd find 3 or 4 people in a similar position to me, and it was 100 messages by the next day of everyone in the same boat. So now the Facebook groups, they work. You join the group for your city anytime you want to go do something with anyone. You just post up, you say, does anyone want to go for a hike next Sunday? Does anyone want to go to Morocco for 4 days? Like literally everything has happened. And you kind of have this instant female network to go do stuff with.
You have globally?
Yeah, it's about 35,000 now. So we've got our requests for a lot more cities, but we're launching our own app probably towards the end of the summer. So we're kind of holding off on launching new cities until then.
Great.
Thanks.
Wow.
Ali, could you give us I know you've already spoken, but if you could give us a brief background, what do you do?
Well, I'm a writer. I've just released my first book called Minding Mum, which is a wellness book for new mums. It's all about self-care for mums. I have a weekly column in the Daily Mail. I contribute to lots of other publications. I do lots of talks. I'm still modelling in my old age. What else do I do? Yes, I have a website called Be Complete LAE. And Unplugged for Kids, Chris? Yes, Unplugged for Kids. So, yeah, I do a variety of stuff, but really in the whole area of wellness, and I suppose my whole message is self-care and connecting the dots with our own health and well-being, and I suppose putting the power back into people's hands.
Great. Thank you. John?
Thanks a million. I'm a male model. I know I'm not. I wish. Great Place to Work is the company. We analyse and assess workplaces all over the world and then produce lists of the best workplaces. We do that in 48 countries, and probably the best known list is the Fortune 100 list of best companies to work for in the States. But the key defining feature of a great workplace is the level of trust that exists, and that's what we're obsessed about, is trying to get people to focus on high trust relationships, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. Everything else is slightly superfluous. If you focus on that, you'll get all the well-being that you need. If that bit is wrong, you won't be well at work.
Perfect. Thank you. Justin?
John, the guys on the panel have to say their age.
Good for them. 49. Is that okay?
Justin Keating. Don't know. 46, I think. Justin Keating. I set up a company called Version 1. We have 800 people, and we're on John's list of one of the great places to work in Ireland. So we're an IT consultancy.
And it's funny because I worked for pretty much every other IT consultancy before you won Great Places to Work, so I could have ended up there, but anyway, times change. So look, I've got a couple of questions for all of you. First of all, John, I'd like to start with you. There's lots of buzzwords mentioned today: mindfulness, well-being. We've been talking about nutrition, right down to things like dental care and eye care. You deal with companies every day focusing on how to be great. What are you seeing companies invest in and actually see benefits from?
So I suppose going back in time, it was the exceptional companies who were focused on the well-being of employees. It's now become the exceptional companies that aren't. So I think that's kind of great that that's happened. But I suppose what we do see is that it's now the exceptional companies who actually do it right. There's lots of organizations out there who do bits and who have sort of well-being as an event or something that happens maybe once a month. But the ones that get it right have actually planned it, are very strategic about it, and they build it into everything. So it's completely holistic. And what they do is they engage their employees in the development of the programs, and that's really important because it's you know, the organization can't make the employees be healthy. That's a choice, and the employees really need to shape the programs that they want, and the organizations, through I suppose a little bit of help from us, do a lot of work in terms of the data mining to find out, is that your phone, is it? That's Siri talking beside me. It's just, did you get that Tech Life Balance thing? Did you? Where was I?
Siri was answering for you.
I know, yeah. Probably making a better job too. So yeah, that kind of holistic piece, and the employees actually shaping the programs themselves. And I think also the piece that's really important now is that flexibility in terms of that. So basically there's a range of potential things that you can actually avail of, and it's actually a choice thing that you decide what's right for you in your particular moment in life. If you're, 17 versus if you're, 49 or 46 or allegedly, or 60 or 80 in the workplace, because that's something I love about the workplace now. That I was at something recently, and they basically said this 100-year life is there. That if you're born in 2012, you've got a 1 in 3 chance of living to 100. Unfortunately, you'll have to work until you're 80 to pay for it. But the key thing about that is that we can expect to see lots of 80-year-olds in the workplace of, not too far away tomorrow. Some in the old days had to do it because they needed it for money, but now it's just that, retirement invariably ends in death, so it's not a good idea. So I think very few people are actually going to be retiring anymore. They're just going to be doing more of the things they want to be doing. But work is a key part of that. It keeps us alive, it gives us reason, and it also gives us fulfillment and purpose. Probably the biggest thing that I'd like people to know is that from all our research, we find that a huge amount of people are in the wrong job, doing the wrong work, in the wrong company, and in the wrong culture. And that will make you very unwell.
Thank you, John. Sorry. So Justin's actually going to be next, because I'm picking on him because he had Siri. So we're hoping he knows the answer to this already. Maybe Siri can read the future. So you've been top of the pops with version 1 as far as top of the pops with Great Places to Work for the last number of years. What's the secret?
Well, for us, it started with a journey about 8 years ago that we wanted to make version 1 a great place to work. And we fitted in with John's organisation to figure out what is it that we need to do. For us, it was very commercial at the start. That we knew there's a war on talent across the world. We needed to be able to attract and retain the best people, and that employee engagement had to be at the very core of what we did. So I'd say our management team spend as much time working on staff engagement as we do on profit or customer satisfaction. So it's getting it that much ingrained into the organisation. And after that, it's 100 different things that we do across development, across making sure staff have careers, that it's a psychologically safe place to work, it's health, etc. Just on the health, for example, we have a framework where we have 4 pillars, which are like we say they're like the 4 wheels of a car, and if anyone falls off, you're in a bad shape. And the 4 that we use are exercise, nutrition, stress, and sleep. And we try and do initiatives with our staff to make sure that they're benefiting on all 4 of those sides, and that they stay healthy.
Who'd have thought it? An IT consultancy who have KPIs. Very good, fantastic. So Ali, I'd like to ask you next. So you go into companies regularly now and present on well-being. I've seen you, and I took one of the simple things I took was drink matcha tea, and I've been loving it. It's fantastic. That was my simple change. Thank you. What are you seeing as the hot topics when you're actually speaking to people and presenting? What's the feedback you're getting?
I just think people have too much choice, I think, is the big thing. And I think people don't know where to start. So they're very confused. And what happens when you're very confused is you just stay stuck in your old ways, or you try to make a change. And when you hit the part where you're getting into difficulty, which I think for anybody to make a change in their life, you do have to push through quite tough times. But you really need to push through those tough times and get a breakthrough to feel the benefits of what you're doing. So what happens is I'm seeing a lot of people who get to the part of I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not seeing results quick enough, so that they go back to their old ways. So when I go in, I think it's about simplifying things for people, giving people choice. I think some people think they have to fit a certain formula. So, for example, with exercise, I always say find an exercise that you actually like. For years, because I was a model and I had to go to the gym, I got up at 5 in the morning and I had a trainer and I hated every single bit of it. So I think that's not really doing anything positively for you. So I think it's finding finding what you like and finding out who you are and spending time doing that. And I think that's what's really going to fulfill people in the long run, and not feeling like you have to conform and you have to do things. And, you know, you really hit it on nail on the head there, John, when you said that a lot of people are in jobs that they don't like, you know, and that they're very unhappy with, but they feel like they have no choice. And I always think that no matter where you are in life, no matter what you're doing, and I go into an awful lot of secondary schools, and I did 3 or 4 schools in the last few weeks, and they're doing their leaving. And they were saying, what did you put in your CAO form, and what did you want to be? And I was like, I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do when I was leaving school. And I remember feeling like 4 or 5 random things in the CEO, of course, arts being on top, and maybe something to do with business and something else. But I was very lucky that my mum and dad, I had been modelling, and I was allowed then to go to London to continue that and try and figure out what I wanted to do. But like, I've been back to college, I'm still in college so many times, and I used to ring my mum and go, yeah, you know this course I'm on? Well, you know, and she goes, don't tell me, Alison, don't tell me, it's just not for you. And I was like, I'm going to finish it, but it's just not for me. I just don't see myself in this space. So I always say to people, I'm 38, I'm studying to be a nutritional therapist now. I just graduated another course last year. I'm finding out who I am and what my purpose is. And so age is not a barrier. There's no age limit, there's no barrier. So it's about feeling out what's good for you.
And I think once you have that, you develop a sense of flow. Things just happen a lot more naturally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, you get you really get confidence and self-esteem when you feel like you have a purpose. And when you feel like you have your purpose, you're doing something you're interested in instead of waking up every day and forcing yourself to go to work. And there really is nothing worse than living in a cycle of lifestyle that you're not happy with, when nothing's going well, when you're going home to, maybe a relationship you're not happy with, and you're getting up to go to a job every day, but you feel like you're stuck in a rut. And I think it's important to let people know that we all have a choice to get out of a situation. I was just on a retreat with Sharon Salzberg and a Tibetan Buddhist monk, and she was the first female Tibetan Buddhist monk I've ever seen speak. And I've had a lot of teachers, and they were all male. And she was such a strong teacher, but she really took no shit. And she had quite a disdain for people who kept saying to her, I meditate for 5 hours a day and I do this, and why amn't I a happier person? And she's like, if you are not changing yourself, you're not working with your mind, you're not pushing yourself. She said, I'm so sick of Westerners saying, yeah, but you don't understand my life. Yeah, but you don't understand that I have no time, or I'm really busy, or my situation, or my financial situation. She said, I work with the poorest of the poor all the time, and they're the happiest people, and I never hear them saying, yeah, but. So I think it's about kind of opening our minds and removing those obstacles that really we create for ourselves.
Great, thanks. Harry, as far as somebody who I think has made some amazing choices for your age, when I was your age, I was just basically chasing girls and getting drunk. I'm still pretty similar, actually. I know, I'm sure you do a bit of that, but I've spent a lot of time with you. You've been on one of our retreats, and it's just outstanding to me how much you do, how creative you've been with the businesses that you run, and you maintain this balance. So you're a great ambassador for the generation that you're in. What do you see as the key issues for that generation? What are people struggling with?
Do the whole chasing girls thing, by the way, not very successfully, but yeah, I do that, and I don't get drunk. Obviously, I'm 17, under the legal age. But yeah, I suppose it's an interesting one, because my generation is the generation I always refer to as Generation Tech, without a doubt. We're the generation that's grown up with a piece of technology in their hand, and will most likely die with a piece of technology in their hands. I think I've worked with a close friend of mine for a long time, and for the last 3 or 4 years now, and over the last year or so, he's actually become quite sick with mental health issues. And it's very much something, and I spoke to you a few days ago about it, and we were talking about how technology and mental health relate, and they both come back to each other. And I feel it very much at the moment, and especially when I'm been dealing with my friend for the last few months now, and he hasn't been in school since September, and it's kind of hard to understand what he's going through, because I've never gone through it myself. But I think it has to come back to the technology. It has to come back to the idea that we're constantly connected to something. I've the Apple Watch for God knows why. I don't know why I spend so much money on a watch. I see you have the watch as well, do you? I have a phone, I have an Apple iPad, I have a laptop. I am constantly buzzing. I literally just buzz all day long. in school, at home, in bed. It's literally just vibrating all the time. Stupid notifications. I have a family group chat that goes off at least once every 15 seconds. I'll come up with 5 messages here with 5 pictures of somebody taking a selfie in the car or something. It's ridiculous, and that's the problem. We're constantly connected. And it's the problem between the balance, is because I'm in school and I'm constantly thinking why that just buzzed, or who just rang, or who just texted, or who just tweeted, or who just Facebook notified me. And I think that's going to be the biggest problem for not just necessarily the people who are my age, but in a few years' time, when I look at people who are now in, primary school or just starting secondary school, it's a big problem because there's so many apps coming out. There's Snapchat, there's all these extra things. There's more and more apps, more and more distractions. And, sitting down to study as I'm supposed to be doing, you're constantly there trying to pick up the iPhone or pick up the tablet and realize why it's buzzing, or I'm just going to look at it for a second, 2 hours later, oh my God, I didn't study once. It's a problem. And as I said, it all comes back to the idea that because technology's there, we're constantly connected. And my parents didn't have the problem. My older siblings didn't even have the problem. My older siblings are 24 and 25, and they never really had technology when they were 11, 12. The BBC reported an article today, should it be illegal for 16-year-olds to have smartphones? I think it probably should be. It's a serious issue. And yeah,
you say that now you're 17.
Yeah. If they had said 17, I probably would have said no, but still. Yeah, it is. It all comes back to the technology. It all becomes that thing in your pocket, or that thing on your wrist, or that thing in your bag. It's just the big problem between balancing.
Yeah, and I think a number of us have used the same word, that the concept of balance is so important, and awareness. So there was the talk earlier by Dr. Karen Fitzgerald, who was talking about ABC, so awareness, balance, and connection. And those 3 are so fundamental once we have those. Elva, so Girl Crew is an amazing organization. It really promotes social inclusion. It's very, very special and unique in that it promotes fun and well-being events. You're making a positive change in all the cities you're in. And how do you think you can influence, Girl Crew can influence others, so other groups, other similar organizations to do more of the same?
Mind blank, even though I knew what I was going to say a second ago. I think there's a couple of big shifts that are moving at faster and faster paces in the world at the moment, and so I think that's kind of the advancement of technology and accessibility to the internet. That's reflected in workplaces and organizations everywhere, and even in small businesses starting, that you want to achieve stuff faster and faster and faster because you're becoming faster and faster able to achieve that. And I thought it was interesting that a lot of the focus today, even, and I know it's a corporate focus thing, but a lot of the focus of not being distracted was so you can get more work done, which is kind of like, oh, that's, maybe it should be so you can go outside. So those shifts are happening, but at the same time, there's there's this huge movement towards everybody wanting meaningfulness in their life and the importance of purpose, which I think is so valuable and so important and so necessary, and being happy and looking at happy as a measure of success rather than just material success today. And I think Girl Crew is a great example of using those 2 things as complementary. So we use the technology and the fact that we can go on Facebook, we can log on really fast, we can post instantly, we can say, I want to go out for a walk, I want to talk to someone about the hard day I had at work over a coffee, and instantly you have people who come there, but we take it straight offline and it's back into real life and it's back into real activities. But then on the other side of that, because we're turning Girl Crew, it's a startup, it's an organization. We want to be a big multi-million-dollar company someday. Those are kind of the goals. And what I'm seeing more and more is as organizations, businesses are also operating within the capitalistic system is great in loads of ways, but it lacks a lot of spiritual principles and values in terms of success for the organizations and what their output is and what their goals are. So I think there's a huge responsibility on tech companies to not look at it as a slot machine, maybe look at ways to make money out of it that aren't based on how much time someone spends in your app, and for the public to be upset about that and tell them they want it less slot machine-like.
Thank you. Well, it is the case the likes of Facebook now have a compassion team. So I think unfortunately what that means is they're potentially taking the compassion away from us because they're going to be doing it for us. But it does exist. So question for you all, and we'll go in reverse order. So back to you, Elva. If you could take something from today, and as we're mentioning, you know, the real simple things make big changes. So from all the talks, from the tech-life balance, from nutrition, from lifestyle, we had focus on eye and dental care, all those different things. What do you think's been the most valuable thing that you've learned today?
It's hard to take one thing, I think. But I think the points about turning off email for a little while, like simple things like that. I saw the Freedom app up there on one or two presentations, and I think that's amazing. And I think that's a really good start for stepping back from it, because reflection and being self-aware and living in the present moment, I think, are my most important traits that I cling on to for survival in all the tech stuff. So taking those first little steps where you're actually forcing yourself to have no connection is a good first bit.
Thank you, Harry.
I suppose it's actually something I took as well from Unplug when we had the retreat, and it's something I've been trying to do more, but still can't manage, is to trying to just put the phone down, whether it's for a day, 2 days, 3 days, even just a weekend, and trying to just get away from the whole constant buzz of social media and all emails and everything like that. I think it's something that, as I said, I try to do it myself, but I know that my friends don't, and I know that people my age won't, and you know, probably go the next 10, 15 years with a phone still in our hands, almost glued there. But yeah, I think it's probably the biggest thing I've taken is trying to just put the phone down and forget about the technology for even if it's an hour or 2 hours, trying to do just an activity, and we spoke about this last week, as I said, trying to do an activity that doesn't involve using the phone or doesn't involve using technology. But yeah, I'd say that's the biggest thing I've taken.
A very simple thing. Thank you. Alison.
Actually, just listening to Elva sparked me that you can use social media in such a positive way and make real human social connections. So the fact that you're not just talking to people. I really was interested when she said about Tinder, and she wasn't just kind of staying on Tinder talking to people, but you made it into that people are actually meeting people. I think one of the scariest things that's happening is that we have some of the loneliest people living in the biggest cities in the world. And even like all those sayings that it takes a village to raise a kid, all of these phrases are true for so many reasons, and we're all becoming increasingly more and more isolated. And I think if we can use social media and our platforms for reasons of connecting with people who we never would have, because how many girls have, you know, married friends, and I suppose I'm speaking from personal experience, because it's very difficult for people to meet other people nowadays. We're all so busy. We don't have that time that we used to, you know, to make great connections. So I think that's a very powerful thing. I think it's amazing what you've done.
Yeah, and just to note, there's also Girl Crew mixed groups, and I'm hoping to meet my wife that way. So thank you.
It's not dating, it's not the focus.
It is for me. Justin.
For me as well, it was this afternoon listening to the distractions bit, because I hadn't really noticed how many distractions there are, and it just put in mind when I started up the business, and it was me in a room and no distractions for a whole day, and the phone didn't ring because there was no customers to call me, and the amount of work you'd get done in a concentrated day. And you just start to think about how to get back to that. Second thing then was, I think it was you said, it's sport is the shit for the brain. So want to take away?
I rephrased it slightly more eloquently than that, but thank you very much. John Ryan.
It wasn't from today, it was yesterday. That dog, you know those dogs and what they can do in terms of spotting medical problems that people have by, I can't say what they do, it sounds rude, but anyway, they're amazing dogs, these dogs. And I didn't realize the dogs can actually identify that there's a spoonful of sugar in the size of 2 Olympic swimming pools. That's how sensitive their noses are. So they can sense when there's somebody's going to have a seizure. They can sense major medical difficulties through your urine just simply by sniffing it. So there you go. That was the big takeaway for me. I want one of those dogs. But I suppose on a slightly other point, I suppose sometimes, and it's slightly taking on Ali's point, I think a lot of people can talk about all the problems to do with technology and all the problems with, you know, mental health and all of that. But at the end of the day, we're actually living in the best of times. We've got more than anybody else has ever had in the world, and I actually think people are an awful lot happier, but maybe just a little bit too self-obsessed. And I think there's time to recognise and realise just how bloody lucky we are, to your point, and just so manage technology absolutely and get reconnected, get reconnected in the real world.
Perfect. So celebrate what we've got as well. And what better day on Friday evening to say that. Thank you, John. So just to wrap up, I'd like to thank the panel all for taking part. There's a couple of events coming up just following on from this that we'd like to let you know about. So Unplug are running a public retreat at Grouse Lodge, where Michael Jackson used to live, in a couple of weeks. A couple of the guys from the panel are actually going to come along to that. We have the European Great Places to Work event. When is that, John?
We've got a fantastic lineup of Airbnb, Facebook, Regeneron, Bristol Myers Squibb. We've got the future of work there who are talking about the workplace of the future and demographics, how it's changing the world, technology, new ways of managing. We've got a guy called Manley Hopkinson who went around the world on the BT World Yacht Race, and he brought 8 people who'd never been on a boat in their life before. And he actually managed to get them up to speed and lead them, and he talks about leadership and everything, and there's just going to be loads of fun, and we also have Pat and Carl Henry who are coming along to talk to us about fitness, well-being, and also sex drive and anti-aging. So if that isn't a great reason to go to it, I don't know what is. The 16th of June.
Great stuff. And finally, just a couple of things. We have Lawrence from Digital Mindfulness. He has a couple of events in October, so do check out digitalmindfulness.net. And of course, Future Health Summit 2017, building on a really successful couple of days here at City West. So thanks to all of you for coming along, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.